The city of Malenga had always thrived on its chaos, from the vibrant shouts of market vendors to the buzz of motorcycles weaving through its crowded streets. Yet, within days, that chaos turned to silence, the kind of silence that only death can bring. The city was falling piece by piece to a nightmare no one could understand. It began in the sprawling slums of Bakanza, a maze of tin-roofed shacks and narrow alleyways. Monda, a mother of 3, had been waiting anxiously for her husband, Okolo, to return from the mines. He worked long hours deep in the earth, extracting precious minerals to keep their family afloat. But this time, something was different. When Okolo stumbled through the door late one night, Monda immediately sensed something was wrong. His skin was pale, his eyes clouded, and his movements were jerky and unnatural. He muttered incoherently, collapsing onto the floor. Monda rushed to his side, calling his name, but he didn't respond. Her youngest child, Asha, approached with curiosity. "Papa?" she said softly, reaching out to touch him. Before Monda could react, Okolo lunged, his mouth snapping at Asha with feral aggression. Monda screamed, pulling her daughter away. Okolo's body convulsed violently before going still. Monda's heart pounded as she held her sobbing child. Her husband, the man she had loved and built a life with, was gone, replaced by something unrecognizable. By morning, Okolo's body had vanished. Asha, who had seemed unharmed the night before, now lay cold and lifeless in Maunda's arms. But death was not the end. As Maunda wept, Asha's tiny body twitched. Her eyes snapped open, milky white and devoid of humanity. She let out a blood-curdling scream and attacked. The infection spread like wildfire, moving from Bakanza to the heart of Malenga. The government's attempts to contain it were swift but futile. Soldiers patrolled the streets, shooting anything that moved, but the infected, the undead, were relentless. Each death only swelled their numbers. Maunda survived the initial chaos, though her family did not. She joined a small group of survivors led by Kioni, a resourceful mechanic with a knack for building weapons from scrap. The group included Ndidi, a schoolteacher with a sharp tongue and a sharper aim, Baba Juma, an elderly griot who spoke of curses and ancient spirits, and Io, a street-smart teenager who knew the city's every hidden corner. "This isn't just a disease," Baba Juma said one night as they huddled in an abandoned warehouse. "This is something older, something darker." "Call it what you want," Ndidi replied, sharpening her machete. "It'll still kill us all if we're not careful." Kioni's plan was to reach the port. Rumours suggested that ships were evacuating survivors, but the journey across the city was fraught with danger. The infected roamed the streets in hordes, their eerie howls echoing through the night. Moving in the open was a death sentence, and hiding brought its own risks. Their first major obstacle was Kiboko Bridge, the only way to cross the wide river that split Malenga. The bridge was clogged with abandoned vehicles, many still containing the skeletal remains of those who had tried to flee. Worse, the infected swarmed the area, drawn by the scent of the living. Kioni studied the scene through binoculars. "We'll never make it across with them there." "Then we make a distraction," Ndidi said. "Io and I can draw them away." "No," Monda interjected. "I'll do it." The others stared at her. Maunda, who had been quiet and withdrawn since losing her family, now spoke with a steely determination. "This is my city. My family died here. If I can help you live, then my life still has meaning." Before anyone could stop her, Monda activated a noisemaker Kioni had rigged from an old car alarm. She ran toward the bridge, the blaring sound echoing through the night. The infected turned as one, their hollow eyes locking onto her. Maunda's heart pounded as she sprinted, the horde surging after her. The group seized the opportunity, weaving through the maze of cars and debris. Kioni and Ndidi fought off the few infected that strayed from the main group. Baba Juma whispered prayers under his breath, clutching a makeshift spear. Io led the way, his quick reflexes and keen sense of direction guiding them to safety. When they reached the other side, They looked back for Maunda. She was gone. The infected swarmed the bridge, their frenzied movements obscuring everything else. She bought us time, Keone said quietly. We have to honor her sacrifice. The survivors pressed on, their hope dwindling with every step. They reached an abandoned hospital, hoping to scavenge supplies. Inside, the air was thick with decay. The halls were littered with the remains of doctors and patients who hadn't escaped in time, but something felt off. As they explored, they heard faint whispers. At first, they thought it was the wind. But then, they saw her. Maunda. She stood at the end of a dimly lit corridor, her eyes glowing faintly in the darkness. "You left me," she said, her voice a hollow echo. "Maunda?" Keone stepped forward cautiously. "We thought you—" Her scream cut him off, a sound so inhuman it made their blood run cold. From the shadows, the infected emerged, their movements eerily coordinated. Maunda raised a hand and they stopped, as if awaiting her command. "She's controlling them," Ndidi whispered, gripping her machete tightly. "Run!" Keone shouted. They barely escaped, the infected chasing them through the city's desolate streets. When they finally found refuge in an abandoned skyscraper, they tried to make sense of what they had seen. "She's not Maunda anymore," Baba Juma said. "She's something else, something worse." "What if she's the key to stopping this?" Io asked. "What if we can reach her?" "And what?" "Talk her down," Ndidi snapped. "She's gone. We need to focus on surviving." But Keone wasn't so sure. "If there's even a chance we can end this, we have to try." The group's decision to confront Maunda led them back to the church where they had last seen her. The building was eerily quiet, the air thick with an unnatural stillness. Inside, the altar was covered in strange symbols carved deep into the wood. The carvings seemed to pulsate, as if alive. "This is old magic," Baba Juma said, his voice trembling. "The kind that binds souls." Maunda's voice echoed through the church. "You can't save me. You can't save anyone." She stepped out of the shadows, her once familiar face now twisted with anger and despair. "This city belongs to the dead, and soon so will you." The infected swarmed in, but this time the group was ready. Keone's traps detonated, fire and shrapnel tearing through the horde. Ndidi fought with ruthless efficiency, her machete flashing in the dim light. Io used his agility to outmaneuver their attackers, leading the infected into Keone's ambushes. But Maunda was untouchable. She moved through the chaos like a phantom, her glowing eyes fixed on the survivors. "You can't fight death," she said, her voice reverberating through the church. "It always wins." As the battle raged, Baba Juma approached the altar. He began to chant, his voice growing louder with each word. The symbols on the altar glowed brightly, then began to fade. Maunda screamed, clutching her head as the connection between her and the infected was severed. The horde collapsed, their bodies lifeless once more. Maunda fell to her knees, tears streaming down her face. "I'm sorry," she whispered before the light in her eyes faded completely. The survivors emerged from the church, battered but alive. The city was quiet once more, though the scars of what had happened would never heal. Keone looked back at the church, his heart heavy. "We survived, but at what cost?" "We keep moving," Ndidi said firmly, "for those who didn't." As they walked toward the port, the first rays of dawn broke over Malenga. The nightmare was over, but the world they were stepping into was forever changed.